Before we get into multi-step equations, let's review one-step equations. Remember, to solve addition and subtraction equations, we must add the opposite of the number with the variable to both sides. To solve multiplication or division equations, we do the opposite operation on both sides. In the first example, we must get rid of the 18 by adding a negative 18 to both sides. 18 and negative 18 will cancel, and negative 22 plus negative 18 leaves us with x equals negative 40. Recall, to check your answer, you can plug it back into the original equation. In this example, we can plug in negative 40. Negative 40 plus 18 does equal negative 22, so we know our answer is correct. In the second example, the x is being multiplied by negative 5. We must then divide by negative 5 on both sides. The negative 5's will cancel, and negative 35 divided by negative 5 gives us x equals 7. To check, we can plug 7 back into the original equation. We know that negative 5 times 7 does equal negative 35, so we know our answer is correct. Always keep in mind our end goal. Our end goal when solving equations is always to isolate the variable, or in other words, we're trying to get the variable by itself. We are about to begin to solve multi-step equations. When you're solving multi-step equations, you want to have variable terms on one side of the equal sign and numbers on the other side of the equal sign. Keep in mind, you can add or subtract anything from one side of an equation as long as you do the same for the other side. Recall, adding or subtracting the same number from both sides of the equation will keep it balanced. Remember, we just stated that with multi-step equations, we want variable terms on one side of the equal sign and numbers on the other. In this equation, the first thing we want to do is get all the numbers on one side of the equation, so we would need to move the negative 7 to the other side. Just like with one-step equations, if I wanted to move the negative 7 to the other side of the equal sign, I would need to add the opposite of negative 7 to both sides. So I will add a positive 7 to both sides of the equation. On the left-hand side, the negative 7 and positive 7 will cancel. On the right-hand side, 18 plus 7 will give us 25. Notice we are not just left with x equals 25. We are left with 5x equals 25. Our problem is not finished because x is not isolated. Think, how would you get rid of the 5? Since 5 is being multiplied by x, we will divide by 5 on both sides. The 5's will then cancel, and 25 divided by 5 will leave us with the answer x equals 5. You can check multi-step equations just like you did one-step equations. If we plug in our answer of 5 in for x, we would have 5 times 5 minus 7 equals 18. We know that 5 times 5 will give us 25, and 25 minus 7 does give us 18. We can then confirm that our answer is correct. Again, remember, we want variables on one side of the equal sign and numbers on the other. So in this case, in order to get all the variables on one side, we would need to move the negative 8x to the other side. In order to move negative 8x, we would need to add a positive 8x to both sides. The negative 8x and positive 8x will cancel. And on the left-hand side, 4x plus 8x will give us 12x. We now have 12x equals 42. We would need to get rid of the 12 by dividing by 12 on both sides of the equation. On the left-hand side, the 12's will cancel. On the right-hand side, we have 42 divided by 12. Since 12 does not go into 42 evenly, we can leave our answer as a fraction. Make sure that you always simplify your fraction if you can. 42 over 12 will simplify into the fraction 7 over 2. Let's look at some more examples. In the first example, we need to get the numbers on the same side of the equal sign, so we will move the negative 8 to the other side. In order to move a negative 8, we will add positive 8 to both sides. On the right-hand side, negative 8 and positive 8 will cancel. On the left-hand side, negative 50 plus 8 gives us negative 42. We are left with the equation negative 42 equals 7x. In order to get rid of the 7, since it's being multiplied by x, we can divide by 7 on both sides. On the right-hand side, the 7's will cancel. And on the left-hand side, negative 42 divided by 7 leaves us with the answer x equals negative 6. In the second example, we need to get all the variable terms on the same side of the equation. We will start by moving the positive 5x by adding a negative 5x on both sides. Positive 5x and negative 5x will cancel. And on the right-hand side, 2x plus negative 5x gives us negative 3x. We are left with the equation negative 63 equals negative 3x. Our final step would then be to divide by negative 3 on both sides of the equation. On the right-hand side, the negative 3's will cancel. And on the left-hand side, negative 63 divided by negative 3 leaves us with the answer x equals positive 21. At this point, pause the video and try some multi-step equations on your own. When you feel ready, play the video to check your answers. In the first problem, you should have started by moving the 16 to the other side of the equation. In order to do that, we will add negative 16 to both sides. The positive 16 and negative 16 will cancel. And on the left-hand side, 14 plus negative 16 will give us negative 2. We now have negative 2 equals 5x. We can get rid of the 5 by dividing by 5 on both sides. The 5's will then cancel. And since negative 2 cannot be divided by 5, we can leave our answer as a fraction. So x equals negative 2/5. In the second problem, you should have started by moving the negative 3x to the other side of the equation. We can do that by adding positive 3x to both sides. Negative 3x and positive 3x will cancel. And on the right-hand side, negative 6x plus 3x gives us negative 3x. Our equation is now negative 27 equals negative 3x. We can solve the equation by dividing by negative 3 on both sides. The negative 3's will cancel, and negative 27 divided by negative 3 gives us a final answer of positive 9. There will also be some multi-step equations that contain variables and numbers on both sides of the equal sign. Most of the confusion that arises with these type of problems is simply where to begin. In all actuality, it does not matter where you begin. You simply need to move all variables to one side and all numbers to the other side. I will show you two different ways to solve the following equation, both leaving you with the same answer. The first way to solve the equation is by moving all numbers to the right-hand side. This way is my preference. The first thing I would need to do is move negative 7 to the right-hand side by adding positive 7 to both sides. Negative 7 and positive 7 will cancel, and 13 plus 7 will leave us with 20 on the right-hand side. We can rewrite our entire equation as 4x equals 9x plus 20. Since I moved all numbers to the right-hand side, I will now move all variables to the left. I can move 9x to the other side by adding a negative 9x to both sides. 9x and negative 9x cancel, and 4x plus negative 9x gives me negative 5x. I now have negative 5x equals 20. My last step would then be to divide by negative 5 on both sides. The negative 5's will cancel, and 20 divided by negative 5 gives me the final answer of x equals negative 4. Now suppose someone did not take these exact steps, and instead of moving the negative 7 as their first step, they decided to move the 4x. Let's see how that would play out. Starting off by moving the 4x, I can add negative 4x to both sides. 4x and negative 4x will cancel, and on the right hand side, 9x plus negative 4x gives me 5x. I now have the equation negative 7 equals 5x plus 13. Next, I would move the 13 to the other side by adding negative 13 to both sides. 13 and negative 13 cancel, and negative 7 plus negative 13 is negative 20. I now have the equation negative 20 equals 5x. Finally, to get rid of the 5, I would divide by 5 on both sides. The 5's would cancel, leaving me with negative 20 divided by 5. Negative 20 divided by 5 is negative 4. Notice either way I chose to start out, I still got the same answer of negative 4. Again, it is personal preference how you want to start off solving these types of multi-step equations. For the rest of the examples given, I will always start out by moving any numbers to the right hand side, and then I will move all variables to the left hand side. In this example, we will start out by moving numbers to the right hand side. To move 14 to the right hand side, we can add negative 14 to both sides of the equation. 14 and negative 14 cancel. And on the right hand side, negative 4 plus negative 14 gives us negative 18. Our new equation would be 11x equals 3x minus 18. Next, we will move all variable terms to the left hand side. We can move 3x by adding a negative 3x to both sides. 3x and negative 3x cancel, and 11 plus negative 3x gives us 8x. Finally, we can get rid of 8 by dividing by 8 on both sides. The 8's would then cancel, and negative 18 is not divisible by 8, so remember we can leave our answer as an improper fraction. Make sure if your answer is a fraction, always check to see if you can simplify. In this case, we can divide both the numerator and denominator by 2, leaving us with the final answer of negative 9 over 4. Before we get started moving terms, take a look at this equation and see if you can combine like terms together first. If you are ever able to combine like terms on either side of the equal sign, always do that first. On the left hand side, we can combine together 18 and negative 3. On the right hand side, we can combine together 16x and negative 13x. Remember, we are combining terms, not moving them to the other side of the equal sign, so we will keep their signs the same. On the left hand side, 18 plus negative 3 gave us 15, and on the right hand side, 16x plus negative 13x gives us 3x. So we are left with the equation 15 equals 3x plus 12. Now we can start moving terms. We will first move 12 by adding a negative 12 to both sides of the equation. 12 and negative 12 will cancel, and 15 plus negative 12 leaves us with 3. We now have the equation 3 equals 3x. Our final step would then be to divide by 3 on both sides. The 3's will cancel, and 3 divided by 3 leaves us with the answer x equals 1. At this point, pause the video and try these multi-step equations on your own. When you're ready, play the video to check your answers. Remember, you may have started out solving your equation differently from the way that is presented. As long as you got the right answer, do not be concerned about the order you took to solve the problem. In the first problem, I will start out by adding positive 8 to both sides. Negative 8 and positive 8 cancel, and 24 plus 8 gives us 32. The rewritten equation is 10x equals 6x plus 32. Next, we can move 6x by adding a negative 6x to both sides. 6x and negative 6x cancel, and 10x plus negative 6x gives us 4x. We now have 4x equals 32. The final step would be to divide by 4 on both sides. The 4's will cancel, and 32 divided by 4 gives us a final answer of 8. In the second problem, you can combine like terms on the right-hand side of the equation before you solve. We can combine together 3x and negative 2x. 3x plus negative 2x will give us 1x. Rewriting the equation, we have 4x minus 23 equals 7 plus 1x. We can now start off by moving numbers to the right-hand side. To move negative 23, we can add positive 23 to both sides of the equation. Negative 23 and positive 23 will cancel, and 7 plus 23 gives us 30. Our rewritten equation is now 4x equals 30 plus 1x. Next, we can move 1x by adding a negative 1x to both sides. 1x and negative 1x will cancel, and 4 plus negative 1x gives us 3x. We now have 3x equals 30. The final step would be to divide by 3 on both sides. The 3's will cancel, and 30 divided by 3 leaves us with the answer x equals 10. When an equation contains parentheses, we always want to distribute first. After you distribute, see if there is anything that you can combine together on either side of the equal sign. Finally, move terms to either side of the equal sign to solve the equation. In this problem, the first thing we want to do is distribute. Notice that you're going to have to distribute on both sides of the equal sign. On the left-hand side, we will distribute the 8 to the x, and also the 8 to the negative 3. On the right-hand side, we will distribute the 15 to the x, and we'll distribute the 15 to the negative 2. On the left-hand side, 8 times x gave us 8x, and 8 times negative 3 gave us negative 24. Notice we just brought down the positive 5x in our original problem. On the right-hand side, 15 times x gives us 15x, and 15 times negative 2 gives us negative 30. Next, you must check to see if there's anything you can combine together on either sides of the equal sign. On the left-hand side, you can combine together 8x and positive 5x. 8x plus 5x gives you 13x. We now have 13x minus 24 equals 15x minus 30. Now there is nothing left that we can combine together on either side of the equal sign. So we can start solving the equation by moving negative 24 to the right-hand side. To do that, we will add positive 24 to each side. We now have 13x equals 15x minus 6. Next, we can move 15x by adding a negative 15x to both sides. This leaves us with negative 2x equals negative 6. Our final step to solve this problem would be to get rid of the negative 2 by dividing by negative 2 on both sides. Negative 6 divided by negative 2 gives us the final answer of positive 3. You can check multi-step equations just like you do one-step equations. Every time you see an x, you can plug in our answer of 3. We would first do what's inside of the parentheses. Now we have 8 times 0 plus 5 times 3 equals 15 times 1. 8 times 0 is 0, 5 times 3 is 15, and 15 times 1 is 15. Notice we now have 0 plus 15 equals 15, which we know is true. So we know that our answer of x equals 3 is correct. Let's look at another example. In this problem, again, we want to distribute first and then rewrite our problem. On the left-hand side, we will want to distribute the 3. On the right-hand side, we will want to distribute the negative 2. Rewriting our problem, on the left-hand side, we have 6z minus 9 minus 3. And on the right-hand side, we have 3z minus 4z plus 2. Remember, on the right-hand side, we were distributing a negative 2. So the negative 2 times 2z gives us negative 4z, and the negative 2 times the negative 1 gives us a positive 2. Next, we need to look at our rewritten problem and see if there's anything we can combine together. On the left-hand side, we can combine together negative 9 and negative 3. On the right-hand side of the equation, we can combine together 3z and negative 4z. Remember, at this stage we are not moving any terms, we are just combining, so all signs will stay the same. Rewriting our problem, we have 6z minus 12 equals negative 1z plus 2. Now we can move numbers to the right-hand side. To move negative 12, we will add a positive 12 to both sides. We are left with 6z equals negative 1z plus 14. Next, we can move negative 1z. We can do that by adding a positive 1z to both sides. We are left with 7z equals 14. Our last step would be to divide by 7. 14 divided by 7 leaves us with the final answer of z equals 2. Pause the video and try a problem where you must distribute, combine, and then solve. When you're ready, play the video to check your answer. Your first step should have been to distribute on both sides of the equal sign. On the left-hand side, we will distribute the 9, and on the right-hand side, we'll distribute the 3. Our rewritten problem would then be 18y minus 18 plus 13 equals 3y plus 24 plus 16. Next, ask yourself, is there anything you can combine together on either sides of the equal sign? On the left-hand side, you can combine together negative 18 and positive 13. On the right-hand side, you can combine together 24 and 16. Our new problem would then be 18y minus 5 equals 3y plus 40. Next, we can move the negative 5 by adding positive 5 to both sides. We are left with 18y equals 3y plus 45. We would next need to move the 3y by adding negative 3y to both sides. 18y plus negative 3y leaves us with 15y equals 45. Our last step would then be to divide by 15. Our final answer would then be y equals 3. Just remember, as you are doing your practice, distribute first if needed. Next, always combine anything on either side of the equal sign. Finally, you will move all numbers to one side of the equal sign and variables to the other in order to solve.